Wouldn't it be great if the Bible was like Alexa? You know, this little fancy high-tech gadget where you can just ask it any question you want and it answers back in this gentle lady voice. I think a lady voice, I don't know. Alexa, what is the weather? Will my mouth still freeze shut if I go outside? Alexa, who won the game? Oh, wait, I don't care about that. Order me a pizza. What if the Bible was like that? Well, it's not. The Bible is not your own personal Alexa. Happy New Year. The Bible is not like Alexa. It's not like a simple to follow instructional manual. It's not like a find an easy answer to all my problems book. It's not a pick a verse that you can use to try to get somebody else to behave the way you want them to book. When we try to treat the Bible like Alexa, we end up mangling the Bible. We end up misusing it. We try to get it to say things it never meant to say. We are at risk, when we treat it that way, of missing the message altogether. The Bible is not Alexa. The Bible is this grand, beautiful, powerful, mysterious, confusing story of the life and the work of God in the world. And it is his invitation to us to join him in that life and in that work. And so as we turned as a teaching team to this January 4-week series on family, we did not as a team say, hey, Bible, how do we live in our family in 2017? And it yells back, boopity boppity, 3 easy steps to living in your family. It just doesn't work that way. And I mean, if we want to be super honest, Jesus said some really hard things about life and family. He really did, some really confusing things. But as we look at Jesus' teachings as a whole, which is what we need to do to understand his heart, we can see truths in Jesus' teaching that are universal for followers of his. Truths that we then are called to apply to all kinds of life circumstances, even to the modern American family. God bless its dysfunctional little soul. So as we spend the next 4 weeks looking at this concept of friendship and family, how those things kind of work together, we landed in this teaching, this discussion that Jesus is having with his disciples in the upper room before he goes to the cross. It's found in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, starting with verse 9. And I'm just going to teach my way through it, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some specific circumstances of family life where this can get played out. This is what Jesus says to his closest friends, whom I think at that point in time he considered his family. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. He's saying to his followers, as God the Father has loved me, which means intimately, personally, deeply, unconditionally, eternally, in all of those ways, so now I love you. Jesus says, I love you. This is our only starting point in life. Remember, for those of you who were at the gathering this year, and Jeff taught this idea that we can't love God or love ourselves or love other people or love our enemy unless we first understand that we are deeply, deeply loved. You are deeply loved. Now, Jesus says, remain in my love. Some of you have a Bible translation that will say, now abide in my love, which is such a churchy word. No one uses the word abide outside of church. What does it mean? What's Jesus trying to say? He's saying, now that you know how much I love you, I want you to make yourself at home in it. I want you to come into it and let your hair down, loosen your tie, take your makeup off, put your comfy jeans on, put your favorite sweatshirt on, take your shoes off, put your feet up on the coffee table, and stay put. Live here. Make this your home. Live and stay put in my love. He continues. He says, if you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. That's how you stay home. Just as I have kept my Father's commands and I stay home in his love, what I want you to do is do what I say, right? He's linking that together. One of the ways that you stay home in his love is you do what I say. And then he says, I've told you this so that my joy might be in you and that your joy might be complete. So he's saying, I'm not telling you this right now because I'm telling you something bad or hard. I'm telling you what I'm about to tell you because I want you to live a life of joy, the same joy I have. But here's the kicker. Here's what's coming. I love you as the Father loves me. Stay home in that love. How do you do that? You do what I say. And then here's his big statement. Everything hinges on what he says here, verse 12. My command is this. This is the command that helps you stay in his love. Love each other as I have loved you. I cannot stress to you in the original language how strong Jesus' language is here. In the Greek, it gets weirdly translated. It's as if Jesus is saying, here is the my. Here is the my. Here is my one big point. If I have anything to say to you at all, here it is. Love each other as I have loved you. And then he adds some hot sauce to that command by saying this. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Jesus, you're saying that to live in your love, to stay put in it, to obey your one big command to love others, that's going to cost me something? Like it's costing you something? They don't know yet, but he's headed to the cross. Yeah, Jesus said it's going to cost you something, but you know what? Do it. Because it is the way to joy and to have friendship with me. Because then he says in verse 14, you're my friends if you do what I command. What does he command? To love one another as I have loved you. You are my friends. And then he says, I'm no longer calling you servants. So he's making a transition with his disciples, his students. I'm no longer going to call you servants because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I've called you friends. For everything I've learned from my Father, I have made known to you. The Bible is not Alexa. But if I claim to follow Jesus, the Bible does answer this one question for me. How am I to treat other people? Jesus says to those of us who follow him, you are loved by me in the same way I am loved by my Father. That's just true. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to keep it. It's just true. Now, because that's true, I'm asking you to do two things. One, stay put. Don't leave this love. And love other people in a costly way, in the same way I've loved you. Do those things, and I'm your friend. So what does that look like to take that truth of Jesus and apply it to life in our families today, whatever our families look like? And I especially want to hone in this morning on this particular part of family and ask, what does this look like in the family relationship between parents and adult children? Or parents and children who are becoming adults? How do I follow Jesus in this transitional time in family, because it's a transition when your kids actually become grown-up people. We always see them as our kids because we change their diapers. Sorry, we can't help it. But as they become adults, it's a transition. Just like Jesus was saying to his disciples, you're no longer my servants, but my friends. And this is a precarious transition in families. You guys, I know it's precarious because I'm right in the messy thick of it myself with 3 people who used to be my kids who've become these strange creatures called adults. I don't really understand how it happened. And here's what I'm learning, just talking with people after the first service. We never talk about this in church. It is uniquely painful to people on both sides, parents and children. There's a lot of pain around this issue. So I want to talk about it, and I want to say this. This transition between parenting kids and parenting adults is a bit like what happened to me over Christmas break. I bought myself a new knife for Christmas because all my old knives were dull. It was time to transition to a new knife. I have to set it up. New season of life, new knife, happy wife. That's what I thought. Here's a picture of it. And this is a Miyabi knife, and its tagline is Far Eastern elegance meets exceptional sharpness. So it was Christmas Eve day, and we were whipping up a bunch of meals, a bunch of appetizers for dinner that night, and I thought to myself, let me get out my new Miyabi knife as I was cooking and chopping on Christmas Eve. And my adult kids, all 3 of them said, don't do it, Mom. Do not get out a brand new Miyabi knife where Far Eastern elegance meets exceptional sharpness on Christmas Eve. You will surely cut yourself. And I looked at my grown kids and I said, why don't you all be quiet? I'm a grown woman. I would not be so stupid as to cut myself with this brand new knife. That's what happened next. And then as my daughter was helping me find first aid on this, she said to her dad, go in there on the cutting board and dig Mom's finger out of the kale salad. So that's the little tip of it there. See? This is your constant reminder of how difficult this transition is. The transition from parenting kids to parenting adult children is like buying a Miyabi knife. There is so much potential for so much good. But there's so much potential if you are not careful. If you forget that you just bought a new knife and you start chopping kale and carrots like you think you're an Iron Chef, there will be blood. There's so much potential in our families in these moments for great good, but there's also potential for great damage. And I just saw it in the eyes of some of my friends in the lobby. And wouldn't it be great if the Bible were like Alexa and we could just say to it, please give me 3 easy steps to parenting my children? Alas, it is not. You know, so instead, what we're called to do is the harder, richer work of reading the Bible and immersing ourselves in the teachings of Jesus and asking ourselves, like this passage on what Jesus wants us to do with each other, which is love each other. What does that look like? How does this apply in my family? Whatever, you know, I know all of us are in all different stages and we're going to address those as we go. But as I was pondering these words of Jesus over Christmas, and pondering this particular transition of family life, I looked around and noticed I was surrounded by all these young adults, ages 22 through 34. And I had this wild, crazy idea to ask them, what do you want your parents to know about parenting? And I thought, why didn't I ask this question of them 10 years ago? So many parents said to me out in the hall, I wish I would have heard this 20 years ago. I wish I would have heard this 10 years ago. And I said, well, you probably wouldn't have listened because you thought you had it nailed. Parents of young children, you don't have it nailed, okay? Listen to this, pay attention. So here's my top 10 list. It all started to form as I was praying and thinking and listening. Top 10 list, 2018, for when kids become adults. Now, if you're not in this situation right now, pick one of these and apply it to any other relationship you're in. I promise you it will be good. Number 10. When kids start to become adults, we have to make the transition to a new form of relationship or there will be blood. Okay? Parents, we need to move away from overt parenting, like Johnny, you have to wear a coat, it's cold outside. We need to move away from that toward more of a consultant role, more of a friendship role. And for so many of us, this is really hard. We spent our whole life telling some of you to brush your teeth. And now, we're not supposed to say anything. Young people, you are moving out into the world in a new way, and you're learning to land on your own 2 feet. You are supposed to land on your own 2 feet. It is okay for you young people to have your own life. Parents, get a life. Your grown kids want you to have a life so that you don't try to live their life for them. Because when you do, this happens, okay? Make the transition. Number 9. This is the first thing our kids told us. Parents, be honest with your grown adult kids about your own life, especially those times when you struggled or failed, were confused, and made bad choices. You know why? It helps your grown kids not feel so bad about their own lives when they're confused or make bad choices or don't know what to do or they're struggling or they fail. One of my kids' favorite stories about their dad was when Chuck and I first got married. We were in our early 20s, and Chuck was kind of trying to find himself or whatever that means, and had a lot of angst about his career choices. And so one night he just walked out of our apartment and laid on his back on the sidewalk in Chicago and stared up at the sky. I happen to think it's because he realized he was set up for a lifetime with me, and he had to go lay down there and just ponder that for a little bit. But they love that story because it lets them know it's okay to be confused and scared and worried about failure. Kids, ask your folks about their life, especially when they were your age, because you know what? They're a lot more interesting than you think. I know I am. Number 8, listen. Listen. Or I should try to say become good listeners, because most of us are bad listeners. Parents of young adults, do not preach. The time for that is gone. Do not give advice unless it is asked for 10 times. Talk less. Ask open-ended, genuinely curious questions, not manipulative questions disguised as advice. Ain't nobody got time for that. Your kids are too smart and they know what you're doing. Practice, this is the best one. This is the same under listen. But as you're listening, practice maintaining a friendly yet neutral facial expression. I worked on this when I had teenage kids. I'd pick them up after school and they would get in my vehicle and tell me a story about who got what pierced that day. I need it at a whole new level now. Plan ahead for what your face will look like when your adult child says to you, my boyfriend is a practicing whatever, fill in the blank. I am going to quit college to become a bartender. Hey Mom, my husband and I are planning to give birth to our first child in a snowbank. We heard it's a new way to do this. We're moving to Istanbul. I'm going to tattoo my entire back with a photo of our dog. Whatever it is, I had a dad out there telling me what he did when his 18-year-old got her belly button pierced, and he failed at this. Listen, shut your mouth, put a friendly look on your face, and have a set response, like, wow, tell me more about that. If you do not do this, they simply won't talk to you about their life. It's truth. If your young adult calls you in a crisis, listen. Help them find their way to their own solution. Young adults, if you want to call your parents, but you don't want advice, start the conversation by saying, "Hi, Dad, I don't want your advice. I just want you to listen." 10, 9, and 8. Back to Jesus for a moment, a refresher, a reminder. John 15. Jesus says, "You are loved by me. Now stay put." How? Love others as I have loved you. Then you'll be my friends. Okay? You are loved, stay put, love. You are loved, stay put, love. You are loved, stay put, love. Number 7, no guilt trips. Heard this from all 3 of my kids. Parents, don't make your grown kids feel guilty about not being in touch. It only makes them not want to be in touch. Although my grandma used to slip me $20 when I wrote her a letter, so there's that. She'd be all like no one else saw it. Kids, if we call too much, teach us to text. If we text, answer us or we think you're dead. Amen? Call your parents sometimes for no reason except to say, "Hi, thanks for raising me. I love you. I'm alive. Goodbye." Number 6, it is okay to have healthy and appropriate boundaries. And by that I mean we are in charge of how others treat us. We are in charge of when and how we will engage with other people. Jesus had boundaries, especially with his own family. If your relationship with your parents has been especially toxic, young folks, or is currently toxic, it is okay for you to love them from a distance. Parents, it is okay to have boundaries with your kids if they are in a toxic stage. It is okay to say to them, "No, I'm not going to give you money every week to play video games." It is okay to say to your healthy, functional, grown adult child, "It's time for you to get a job and move out of the apartment. Move into an apartment." "No, you cannot talk to me that way. It's time to get off the cell phone bill, Frank. You're 45. Healthy, appropriate, wise, kind boundaries are a beautiful way to love the people in your life. Number 5. This was the biggest aha for me. Don't take your adult children's decision about how they're going to live their lives personally. Blew my mind when my son said this. Their choices, their views, their beliefs are now appropriately becoming their own. Their choices are not a direct slam of your choices. And when you treat them that way, when you take them as a personal affront, it stresses your adult kids out and it makes them not want to be honest with you. Give them space to become themselves, not a miniature version of you. Young people, you don't have to burn down your folks' house to build your own. Respect our views, our beliefs, our way of living. You make your own. Go ahead. But you can still respect and honor ours. This is so huge and would solve a multitude of problems if we could understand this. Number 4, work hard to have safe conversations about faith. Both sides. If there was a Miyabi Knife Award for the most dangerous topic between parents and young adults, this one would win. Why can't we have conversations with our young adults about faith without someone bleeding? Some of us can, and that is so awesome and beautiful, but so many of us can't. Parents, we need to stop demanding that our adult kids believe the same things they did when they were 7. Lots of becoming adult people are doing the very age-appropriate thing of asking hard questions, pushing away from their parents, trying to discern their own beliefs, and it is often a long and winding journey. Why do you think so many of our newest members are young adult-ish people who are coming back to the church after an absence? It's because they've been on a journey. Let your child, your newly formed adult, have their own faith journey without freaking out all the time. God's not freaked out about your child's faith journey. He's really not. However, young adults, don't announce to your mom at church that you are now an atheist. Okay? That's not going to go well. Parents, don't call your college-age child and tell them if they don't go to church tomorrow, they're going to hell. You're laughing, but you know this stuff happens. This is not helpful, and it's not true. When it comes to faith, if we are honest, we're all on a journey. Let's cheer each other on with love and grace and stop freaking out. Number 3, these will go quickly. Be kind. Becoming an adult is hard. I wouldn't relive my 20s for $1 billion. But being a parent of young adults is hard. Because you know what? Not only are we trying to figure you guys out, we're aging ourselves, and often we're helping our own aging parents. So be nice. Number 2, laugh. Even in the darkest moments. Laugh. Karl Barth, the great German theologian, said laughter is the closest thing we have to the grace of God. My oldest, Hannah, hates my decorating, which one Christmas completely tanked me because she came home and she looked around the living room and said, "Do you like anything in here?" Caused me to throw some plastic flowers right down the basement steps. So this year, I decided to take a totally minimalist approach to decorating, except for her room. Closest thing we have to the grace of God, people. I bought this one $2 item from Goodwill. I call this bad boy Sexy Santa. Nailed it, right? You put a candle in his back and he lights up. I placed it front and center in her room just to keep the vibe light this year. It worked. Kids, your parents are your own special version of crazy. Laugh about it. Everybody's parents are crazy. Number 1, apologize. Say you're sorry. This covers a multitude of sins. Parents, tell your adult kids you're just learning. I never raised a 24-year-old. I have no idea what I'm doing. Listen to them without being defensive when they want to talk about ways they were hurt when you were trying to know how to parent them when they were little. Be willing to admit you really messed up sometimes. I had such rules for my eldest. No sleepovers if there's a PG-13 movie. What, you're 16? I still don't care, you're not going. Right? By the time my youngest Will was 16 or 17, he'd be going out, I'd head up to bed and I'd yell down the stairs, "Don't be dumb." All I can say to my eldest is, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry, honey." And sometimes she turns to me and she says to me, you know what, Mom, I'm sorry too. I'm sorry too. And those moments are so sweet. Apologize to each other. Now, I just want to say that I get for some people this top 10 list isn't helpful and it's not very funny right now because you're in a lot of pain. You're maybe even in a lot of pain in this stage of family. And I want to say I don't fully get it, but I can imagine. And if that's you, I just want to say, will you be honest about whatever it is that's going on to yourself and to God and maybe to a trusted friend or two? Don't try to hide it or deny it. It just takes too much energy. And would you lean into the church? Orchard, of all things, wants to be a place of safety for folks who are struggling. And we want to be brutally honest about what's actually true in our families. And I want to say this so clearly. If you're sitting out there and you're thinking everybody else at this church has perfectly formed adult kids who've never gotten in trouble or lost their way or rejected their faith or skipped school or had an eating disorder or sold drugs or got arrested or whatever you can imagine, if you think no one else and nobody up on this stage has kids who are going through those things, you are wrong. We're all struggling. So here's the truth for every single person in this room and in the sanctuary. Jesus loves us in the same way he is loved by his Father. He wants us to stay put in that love. And the primary way we do that is by loving those around us, even our family, even our becoming adult kids, even our parents who were blindly trying to find their way, even if it costs us an arm or a leg or a piece of our finger. And when you do that, Jesus says, you're my friend. You're the friend of Jesus. And I can't think of anything I'd rather be. Let's pray. God, being in families is hard. Being in families is good, but it reveals stuff about us that's hard, and it gives us moments of great pain. And yet your word is super clear here. So would you help each one of us figure out one way we can apply this truth of yours, that we are loved, we're to live in that love, and then we're to love. Would you help us, God, in one way to think how you might help us do that in our families? Amen.